I did not choose the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement chose me because I was not going to be an agitator because I wanted my life to take another path. So I did not choose this movement. I woke up in Biloxi, Mississippi, where I was caring for a sick cousin one day. And I woke up and I was just kind of caught up in what I had been hearing about the beaches and integrating the beaches. And I worked in a little restaurant. And every day these 3 black gentlemen came in and I served them. I didn't know who they were. I later learned that they were the only 3 black attorneys in Mississippi: Attorney R.J. Brown, Attorney Jack Young, and Attorney Carsey Hall. So one day when I went over to give the meals to these gentlemen, Attorney Jack Young stood about 6'3", and he said, "Well, young lady, I haven't seen you at any of our meetings. Why haven't you been to any of our meetings?" And I was kind of intimidated because I didn't know him. And I said, "Well, I'm going to come." He said, "Well, I want to see you at our meetings." Well, before I knew it, I was in those meetings, walking on those beaches, helping to integrate those beaches, speaking at the meetings and speaking at the rallies, but there was so much I did not know. So I took those moments as teachable moments, but when Medgar Evers was assassinated, what I simply could not understand was how was it in America that a man could be gunned down in the presence of his wife and children for just what I thought was attending a meeting, until I really understood that blacks didn't have the right to vote. My mother and daddy didn't have the right to vote, but they never really talked about that. But I couldn't understand how he could just be killed, and for what reason. And so I took the blinders off and I began to just get, really involved. That's why I say I didn't choose the movement, it chose me. I had been taking scores of people to the courthouse to register because we had days that we would have voter registration rally days where we would take people to the courthouse to register. The day that I went to register, I went alone, even though the townspeople knew who I was, but I went alone because I was hoping that if I didn't have a crowd of people with me, that the registrar would be kind enough to allow me to register. So when I went to register, I went in and told him what I wanted, and just very angrily, he threw this 2-page, 21-item questionnaire at me and said, "Go over there and fill it out." Some of the questions were, now the first few questions were name, address, maybe social, place of employment. But then as you got into the 21-item questionnaire, there were crazy questions, and I'm telling you, how many jelly beans are in a pound of candy? How many bubbles are in a bar of soap? How many feathers are on a chicken? How many polka dots in a yard of fabric? Or are you a communist? Anything that the registrar dreamt up on a particular day, he put it on a questionnaire. Now, the questionnaire for the whites was 6 items: name, address, employer, social, maybe 1 or 2 other questions. When you got to item number 17, you had to go back to his desk and reach in a cigar box and pull out a section of the Mississippi Constitution that he had written these questions on and folded it so when you reached in the cigar box, you didn't know what section you were getting because they didn't teach us in Mississippi schools back in the day about the Constitution. So I pulled out the question, define habeas corpus. I had absolutely no idea what it meant. But I wrote something because I was hoping that if he was having a good day, that he would allow me to pass. And so when I finished the questionnaire, and I even dressed up that day. I put on my high heels and I had on my gloves, and I dressed up that day because I just knew I was about to become a first-class citizen. And so when I finished the questionnaire and I gave it to him, and I looked him straight in his eyes, because Mother had always said when you're talking to people, look them in the eye. And so he looked at me and he looked at my questionnaire, and I finally said, "Well, how did I do?" Well, very angrily, he said, "Well, you didn't pass." And so I said, "Well, sir, what was my mistake?" And you see, I knew not to get too loud because just across the hallway was the office of the sheriff. a sheriff who had a reputation of beating people, killing people, people gone missing. And so I knew not to get too loud because I didn't want the attention. I didn't want the sheriff to come and drag me out of that courthouse, the same courthouse where A Time to Kill was filmed. And so I said, well, sir, what was my mistake? He said, nigger, I told you didn't pass. You get the hell out of my office. And so the day that I left the courthouse and I walked down the corridor, I decided that I would run for public office, and I knew that I was going to win it. And so when election time came, and when I qualified for the position of election commissioner, the previous group changed the rules because I was running from Canton, which was beat 1. And there were 5 beats in Madison County, and each person represented a beat. But when I ran for office and qualified, they changed the rules and required that I run in all 5 beats. This was just another way of trying to defeat me. But of course, on November the 5th, 1968, I became the first African-American female to be elected to a public office in a biracial town, post or pre-Reconstruction. And that was a position of election commissioner, which actually supervised the office of the circuit clerk. I got well over 4,000 votes that day. So it just goes to show you that once you put your mind to something, you can accomplish it.